this essay. Life as a Black asexual is a very isolating experience. There are many reasonings behind my thought process on this. Because much of the world's gaze is based on the Eurocentric ideals that Europeans have spread across this world, Black bodies have been hypersexualized, and ever since they've discovered us in our native lands, they set a precedent in place of how our bodies are viewed. This colors how Black people see asexuality and often rejects the idea that asexuality exists, especially for a person like me. In the gaze of Eurocentric media, it has both desexualized and sexualized us in many different ways. The mammy stereotype as well as the Jezebel stereotype makes this evident. In an article by Kira Starrett named Asexuality and Hypersexuality in Black American Cinema, the manifestation of the Jezebel and mammy archetypes in modern film and their origins, we see a reason why there is pushback in the Black community against the title asexual. The mammy is the most familiar archetype and originated in the antebellum South. This archetype traits are to put aside her own needs for the white family. Her servitude for the white family is the only inkling we get of her love. It exists for the white family and her own inherent pleasures. Sturrock goes on to say the mammy's body is depicted as heavy-set, dark-skinned, usually older in age to allude to her wise, motherly role for the white children. A vital part of the mammy is her asexuality. Her sexuality is erased because she exists to love the white family she's serving. Film Days 2021. I would like to make the point that this is more of a desexualization rather than just mere asexuality, because the mammy figure herself did not proclaim she was asexual, but rather the master or other eyes who proclaimed her to be. In explaining this, does the audience understand the dilemma facing a Black woman who is heavier set and darker skinned? So the question coming to mind probably is, what is it like being both sexualized and desexualized as a Black woman who is asexual? It creates a real sense of confusion. On one hand, a person expects for a person like me to be okay with being desexualized because you're asexual, right? And asexuals are not merely here to be desexualized, but rather exist and be in the neutral term asexual. Desexualizing Black women has been a leading cause, as seen in the mammy trope, that Black women have no desire, sexual or otherwise. This speaks to the desire politics, racism, and Black womanhood. Audre Lorde is quoted as saying, "Those of us who stand outside the circle of this society's definition of acceptable women, those of us who have been forged in the crucibles of difference, those of us who are poor, who are lesbians, who are Black, who are older, know that survival is not an academic skill. It is learning how to stand alone, unpopular, and sometimes reviled." In an article by Antiniki Falaye, and I hope I pronounced that right, the politics of desirability, there is a defining of desire in a political way where desire actively shapes system of power and oppression. Within the system of racism, sexism, white male patriarchal supremacy, bodies who do not fit the concept of desirability, according to mainstream media, are in lower hierarchies than those who are seen as attractive and thus desirable. Much of how we see beauty and the preferences that we have are influenced by bigotry and biases of ethnocentrism. In a 2016 article on the site everydayfeminism.com, Hanziad writes, "It's not hard to see that these objective standards, which I easily recognize, have deep parallels of oppression. A fit body rarely is rarely disabled and never fat. Good skin is often light, if not white. Ideas around masculinity and femininity and who fits them and directly related to cis heterosexism are directly related to cis heterosexism. Excuse me. Black women, even if we do know how desirable we are considered undesirable by the mainstream media. As an asexual, it's not so much that I care to be seen as undesirable or desirable, but as a person whose existence and experience is valid in this world and is worthy in that manner. I want to see other Black women, regardless of their bodies, sexuality, looks, skin tone, loved and cherished, and if they would like, desire in a way that affirms them and their existence. For a long time, Black women with heavier set bodies, the mammy was the standard of what Black women should be, especially on film, and that was our only look into asexuality. Quoted, desexualization, and fat was to be undesirable. However, even when Black women were considered desirable in white mainstream culture, this would lead to our hypersexualization on screen. This can lead to more conversations about how Black women's sexuality is looked at with extremes and never a middle ground or gray area. Hypersexuality is an extreme look that society gives to Black women and even Black girls. Having my type of body sexualized at an early age and growing up was a turning point in my life. Hypersexuality hinges on not letting Black girls be spared their innocence. In comes the Jezebel trope. The portrayal of Black women as lascivious by nature is an enduring stereotype. The descriptive words associated with this stereotype are singular in their focus: seductive, alluring, worldly, beguiling, tempting, and lewd. Historically, white women were portrayed as models of self respect, self control, and modesty, even sexual purity. But Black women were often portrayed as innately promiscuous, even predatory. This depiction, is signified by the name Jezebel, Jim Crow Museum. In analyzing the history of the Jezebel images, we also find the objectifying of little Black girls as well. Also reveals that Black female children are sexually objectified. Black girls with the faces of pre-teenagers are drawn with adult-sized buttocks which are exposed. They are naked, scantily clad, or hiding seductively behind towels, blankets, trees, or other objects. Once again, Jim Crow Museum. The article on the Jim Crow Museum also cites the museum site also makes note of Sweetback's Bad A song, which was rated X and came out out uh, around a time when Black people were tired of seeing the desexualized or asexual Black characters and wanted sexually assertive Black male movie characters. Oftentimes, Black women offered little more than their bodies in these portrayals. However, it is also noted in this article that many times these were white males directing and producing these films. Oftentimes, I find when I bring my asexuality up to other Black people, what many may feel alludes to the lack of desire and sexual expression as a white idea, so they could never imagine using that term. Due to historical concepts of Black sexuality, it may be a valid reaction. However, it completely ignores those who have no desire to be desired in a sexual way. Looking at the concept of asexuality on a global scale, asexuality is often limited to being a white thing because whiteness in a lot of places equals sexual purity. White asexuals may also have their struggles in presenting asexuality to the world, but never on the scales of black aces. We are ignored both in the white gaze and in the black community. Under the white gaze, we are a paradox because we are sexualized young under it and we are seen as hypersexual. But when you add sexuality, asexuality, it seems almost impossible to imagine. The ignoring of asexuality is not merely the fault of the community, but the consequences of ethnocentrism forced upon us. Now, as a black asexual, you might be wondering as you read this, where do we go from here? I think as a collective community, we should continue to uplift our identities as asexual blacks and start to speak aloud about the struggles we face inside and outside our communities. Though it is often dismissed, but nonetheless, and start to imagine ourselves as people who belong not just on this earth, but in our specific communities and identities. Because, yes, despite pushback and the idea that we are cold and unfeeling, we are worthy as human beings who are valuable just as we are. Yes, being a black asexual can be an exhausting experience, but I'd never forego my identity just to fit in and have no regrets. That, however, does not get rid of my confusion living in an normative society in where sex and romance note and to note an aversion to romantic relationships is known as being aromantic is considered the norm and often considered the highest form of love. To be considered a robot, you must not have human emotions. And sex, along with romance, are considered to connect people and, by large, humanity together. When those two things are not rendered important in your life, often stereotypes can range from being an emotionless robot who doesn't and can't love, having sexual trauma, or being essentially an innocent person who doesn't know anything from nothing. Asexual stereotypes are so insidious in that compulsory sexuality is so thoroughly pushed that we are often don't sit to think about what's being pushed as sexual that doesn't have to be sexualized. We don't stop to think about all the food, clothing, art, etc. we have sexualized because that's the norm. It is only when you are being othered that you begin to notice these systems and ideas set in place. Being asexual is being othered by an normative society. There are even statistics that prove asexuals are indeed discriminated against. The Trevor Project has reported that asexual youth reported higher rates of depression and anxiety compared to overall LGBT plus sample, 40,000. We also face threats of conversion therapy, as a study in 2017 from the UK's Government Equalities Office showed asexuality was 10.2% of the 108,000 LGBTQIA plus survey, which spoke about being forced into conversion therapy. My own experience within the lens of black asexuality has been somewhat limited because of the boxes people have put me in. But I wear it proudly because asexuality in and of itself has not limited me. Perhaps we can learn to understand the world from the lens of black asexuality by putting our best foot forward and listening instead of offering harsh rebuke because we before had no idea of it existing. Perhaps we can also create narratives and stories in which the black asexual perspective can be upfront and center.